morning, Vicky here with you, and I'm so excited about this video. Oh my god, I've been dying to make this video for so long, and I'm very, very excited to bring it to you guys. So as you know, probably, I've had a really amazing reading year, and I really fell back into my reading, which is something I had not done in such a long time. Like I used to read a lot as a teenager, and then as I got older I would read, but more during the summertime and not so much the rest of the time, just, you know, running out of steam and so on. But this past year, because I was sick with COVID during the month of February, I was really out of it. It ended up turning into bronchitis, so I didn't have the energy, and I couldn't do, like, I didn't want to do anything. So it really kind of forced me into doing some other stuff, and that included reading. Another thing that I discovered is that I could listen to audiobooks in my car. So I started the year by listening to some audiobook that I found on YouTube, but then I discovered that I could borrow audiobooks from my library. And that's another thing too that I discovered this year, is I had not been to my library for such a long time, and I fell back in love with going to the library. And so a lot of the books that I got were found either on Libby audiobooks with my library, or with the library itself. I did purchase a few of my books, but you will see more into that when I do my my journal video, because I want to make a video about the journals that I've used in the past year, and what worked, what didn't work, and what I'm doing for next year. But this video I figured was going to be just about the books. And so at the beginning of the year, when I started discovering that I was reading a lot, I don't retain a lot of what I read. Like, they will make an impression, and I'll kind of remember some of it, and if somebody talks to me about a book, I'll know if I read it or not. But I don't, as I said, I read a lot of books through my youth and so on, and there's not, I don't have a memory of them for very long. I know some people do. My husband will remember a book like for years and years and years, and he remembers it in detail. That's not something that works for me. I kind of have to empty out my brain. I don't know. That's what it is. So some years ago, I started a Goodreads account, and I've partaken in the Goodreads challenge ever since then. And that's one way for me to document the books I've read, which is I find is really, really great. And it, like, I would participate in the Goodreads challenge, and where you decide how many books you think you're going to read in the upcoming year, and that was something I was doing, and I think I had managed maybe once or twice in all the years that I participated in getting the number of books that I had, you know, given myself to read, which was about between 12 and 18 books. And I think the year I managed was like I had 12, and I did make the 12 books. So anyway, as I said, I wasn't reading all that much, but then with audiobooks that I could listen to while going to work, that really changed the dynamic, because I could read while driving, obviously. I could read while cleaning. So that made a big difference in my year of books. And so that's one of the things that changed. I don't watch TV a lot, and I didn't used to, but I listen to it even less. So I spend my time reading instead. You know, like some people will watch TV, I read. And obviously that makes a big difference. For my mental health, it was one of the things that really helped this year, is to take my mind off what was going on, the stresses and so on. It's to grab a book and to immerse myself in it. One thing that I did change though is last year I read only spiritual books. This year I went back into reading fiction, and I read all kinds of different books, and you will see that in this. So when I saw that I was reading more, I figured I would use this journal that I had purchased a while back and I had not started yet, and it was 100-book reading, so it was a diary for your 100 books. And I figured, well, I'll start it, and obviously it's going to last me for many years. Well, I didn't expect the reading year that I had. So in total this year I read 180 books. 79 of those were audiobooks, and the rest, the 101 books, were actually physical copies of books, either physical or electronic version of books. So that's a whole lot of books. That's a lot more than I ever figured. And one of the things that I've been reading also that obviously increases the number of books that I read is I've been reading some mangas, and I also have been reading some graphic novels, so that are included in this, but it's not that many when you consider the full level of books that I've read. So it's not like I've read 100 mangas. You know, maybe I've read, between the mangas and the graphic novels, maybe I read between 10 and 20, so it's not the biggest chunk of my books, but it's still some increased reading, because obviously mangas and graphic novels are much shorter. So mangas are, if you're not aware, are basically Japanese style, and you read them from back to front, and they're black and white. Whereas graphic novels is a story being told via graphics, obviously, and it has more of a story. It's not so much like a cartoon. It really has more of a story to it. And I started reading those because I wanted some inspiration for my art, and I did get quite a lot of inspiration out of it. But I didn't finish my 100-day challenge, and I never did post that video. So let me know if you would want to see the last that I did in that. Let me know down below, because I have the footage, but I just never shared it on YouTube. So I figured with all the reading that I did, I really wanted to share the top books that I've read, because this year, one of the things that I discovered was through YouTube, booktubers. So people that would recommend books and say how they like the books. And I discovered some people that I have similar taste to. And because of that, my reading year has really increased. Like the quality of books that I read really increased, because I wasn't picking up just any type of books. I was picking up more books that were being recommended. The other thing that changed as well was the fact that I was reading, like I was checking out Goodreads reviews first, and I also would look at the people that I enjoy with, that are my friends on Goodreads. What did they think of the book? And that allows me to know if this is going to be a book that I will appreciate or not. So that really changed the dynamics of it, because I was reading a lot more good books, then obviously it makes you want to read more than if you're reading books that you're like, meh, it was just okay, not that great. Obviously there were some that were just meh, because for example, when I would want to listen to an audiobook, I would look at whichever one was more popular and was available at the moment. And so sometimes I made good discoveries, but sometimes, even though they were popular, they were not my taste at all. And I just got them because they were available at the moment that I wanted to read. So that's one thing that kind of brought my stats down, I would say, is more like the audiobooks that some of them didn't really deliver. But overall, it was quite good. And there's some books that I really wanted to love because everybody loved them so much, but they were okay for me. They were average. They weren't the greatest. So anyway, so that book ended up being, because I read 180 books, this 100-page book became too small for all of those, because the 100 pages stop here. This part here was supposed to be for reading prompts or suggestions for book clubs or lists of books that you want to read in the future or other stuff like that, which is kind of disappointing to me. Like, I would have liked this to be more of a reading journal and less of those prompts and things like that. I would prefer to have this type of idea in another book separate from the book journal. Just because this would be something that I could refer to in the future. But at the end of the day, what I ended up doing is covering up the second part and making it my own, so that I would actually continue documenting all my books within the same book. I didn't want to have two different books. So what I did is I put some of my stats at the front, like here, for example, Sheena McGuire. I read 7 of her books. I've fallen into the Wayward children's series. It was highly recommended, so I read 7 of those in the year. It's a series that I like, but it's not necessarily something I would like. I like read the premise of it, and I've liked some of the books more than others. But yeah, so I've read a lot of her books because they're very short and they're part of that series. I've read 4 Stephen King. I read 4 Taylor Jenkins Reads. I read 4 Tatsuya Endo, which is the author of one of the mangas that I was reading, which is Spy X Family. Then T. Kingfisher I discovered at the latter part of the year, and I loved her, so I read 3. Jessica Townsend, I read 3. Florence Scovel Shinn, I read 3 at the beginning of the year. That's spiritual books, very, very good. I really enjoyed. Dakota Cassidy, which is the author of the Accidental series. It's a paranormal romance series. I had started that way back and continued some of it this year, so I read 3 of those. Frida McFadden, I read 2, and Mary Kubica, I read 2. There's other authors that should have showed up in this, and I don't know why they didn't, because I read more than that. I started reading the Court of Roses, so I read the Court of Roses and the Court of Mist and Fury, so that should have so Sarah J. Maas should have been on this, but she didn't show up. And I think there's others that I read more, but anyway. Oh, like for example, Brie. I read 2 of the Garlic series. It didn't show up either. So yeah, it's strange that those didn't show up. So my year in book, I read 180 books, 57,272 pages read. I accomplished my goal was 18 books, so I did 10 times that number. My average rating for 2023 was 3.9 as per Goodreads, but I round up. So for example, if I give a book a 3.5 score, then on Goodreads I show it as a 4. So obviously this changes the data. This year I'm actually doing an actual Excel spreadsheet, because the accountant in me just has to do a spreadsheet, and I want to have my own graphs, and I want to have my own like proper rating and make sure that the authors that I read, like I want all of those things. So I've started that. Let's hope that I continue. The average book length was 318 pages, which seems to be a good spot for me. Like, I like books that are not over 350 number of pages. I've read some that are longer, but I don't like... First of all, I've discovered that if I read, like, for example, this is the longest, it was The Promised Land from Barack Obama, and it was 768, but that was an audiobook, so it's not like it was easy to read. But like for example, the Court of Mist and I'm having a blank. I don't want to mess up the name. The Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas was 600 and something pages. It's a very heavy book. And as I'm reading a real actual physical book, I'm finding that it's hard on my hands, and it's hard for me to actually read. So the two longest books that I read were Barack Obama's Promised Land and also American God from Neil Gaiman. And that's one thing too, Neil Gaiman didn't show up, but I read 2 of his books this year. So that's surprising. But anyway, the shortest book I read was 80 page. It was Ghost World, and it was a graphic novel. Then this is a graphic of the months and what I read in the months. So I didn't read much in January, but you can see in February when I was sick, I read a lot. Then April was my biggest month. Well, no, actually August was my biggest month because I was on vacation, so I read quite a lot then. And so this is where it started like really going crazy. Then the moods, obviously here in January I was reading a lot of spiritual books from Florence Scovel-Chin. Florence Scovel-Chin, yeah. So the mood was really high, and then I got into more darker type of books. My favorite books were contemporary and thriller, literary, fantasy and mystery. But I read a lot of horror this year versus what I've done in the past. So then I've got the list of all the books that I read. And I ran out obviously of space because this was supposed to be 100. And I had to put some actual pages for the rest that were missing. So now I'm getting into my top books. So because it was such a big year of books, and I just realized that I thought my camera from my shot from myself was showing up, and it's only the book. So anyway, sorry about that. I was sure that the other one was filming, and I'm not gonna start again because it's been a long video already. So anyway, sorry about the fact that it's only my face is not showing up. Oh boy, I got so excited I forgot to turn on one of the cameras. Anyway, so basically the books I'm gonna tell you about, or I'm gonna put them in the order that I read them, and not in the top order, because it would be too hard to reduce it to 11 was really hard. So now I'm gonna go into the 11 books that I really enjoyed. If you want if you like what I'm sharing, you can join as a friend. You can friend me on Goodreads. If you go at Crafting Vicky, like a Google search Crafting Vicky on Goodreads, you should be able to find me. So one of the books that I really enjoyed, a series, was Nevermore. It's a new series that I discovered. I discovered it through a Courtney Diaz, Little Raven Inc., and she was mentioning it, and I started reading it and I loved it. It's an Australian author, new to me. It's young adult fantasy. It's kind of like the Harry Potter world, but in a different type of universe. I really enjoyed that book. So I bought this one because I didn't want to wait to borrow it. And actually at that time I wasn't registered to the library. I registered right after. So I read it from March 14th to March 23rd. As I said, it's young adult, it's fantasy, and it was just really fresh and fun world. And I read the other 2 that were in the series so far. There's another one that's supposed to come out this fall, so I'm looking forward to that. Then and I will try while I'm doing this, to share with you guys a picture on the screen of the book I'm talking about. So then I read Maya Angelou, and this was an audiobook, and it was actually read by her, and I just loved her reading. It was just beautiful, very, very beautiful reading experience. She's had quite a life, and it was my first memoir, I think, for the year that I read, and it got me into other ones. So I read it from April 1st to 7th. It was found on Libby audiobook, and as I said, I highly recommend the audiobook because it's narrated by Maya Angelou. Then the next one is Thank You for Listening. This one is actually, I'll just pause right here. Okay, so sorry about that. I just had a sneeze coming and I just had to stop. So the next one is also an audiobook that I listened to. I listened to it from May 26th to May 28th. It's the author and the reader is Julia Whelan. I just love how she narrates her books. Just as a narrator, she's a wonderful, just such a nice voice. And this was just such a fun romance, easygoing, easy to listen to book. It had me laughing. I needed that in my life. It's some of it had me sad and crying, but some of it had me like laughing. It was just really, really good. So highly recommend if you like romance and just easy books to read. That was highly like a really, really good fun time. Then another one which also was an audiobook. This one is an historical fiction from Bonnie Garmus, and it's Lesson in Chemistry. It's now, I believe, also being put on TV. And it was really, really, I really enjoyed it. It's such a nice, like it showed what it was like to be a woman with a career back in the 50s, and I really loved how she was putting she's a chemist, and how she was bringing this to a TV show that she ended up hosting, and I loved how she wasn't willing to compromise and just play the game. Like she really showed her personality, and that was just perfect for me at the time. So I read it from July 3rd to July 10th. Then I read, while I was on vacation, A Mind Spread Out on the Ground from Alicia Elliott. This I borrowed from the library. It's nonfiction. It's kind of a memoir, but it's little essays. I think it's about Native people, and I'm probably not using the right word to describe them, and I'm sorry if I'm not doing the best of this, but I think this would be a book that would be amazing to share. At least some of the essays would be amazing to share in school, because it brought so many different subjects that need to be discussed in the world, and I really, really loved it. It's not a long read, and definitely something I recommend. It made me think, and there was a lot of hard truth to think about. Then the next one that I read is Finlay Donovan is Killing It. That's also a book that I borrowed from the library. The author is Elle Cosimeno, and it's a contemporary thriller mystery novel. Just ridiculous. It's just really ridiculous how this woman ends up having to kill somebody. She's an author. I wasn't sure I was gonna like it initially because the book starts off when she's running out of her house and she's got these kids and she's trying to find to go and meet her agent, and it's, you know, the world of young mom running around like crazy chickens without their heads. It's a world that I lived in for quite a long time, and it's not usually something that interests me, but it was only the beginning, and the rest of it was really funny, ridiculous. All the stuff that happens to her. It was really a fun time. I read it from September 6th to September 7th, so really, really fast read. Highly suggest if you haven't read it. Then oh my god, this book, guys, I love that book so much. It's Look Closer from David Ellis. It's a mystery thriller. It starts off about a murder taking place on Halloween, and you're trying to discover who did it. And I read it from October 2nd to October 5th. I found it at the library, and first of all, I love the fact that there's a Vicky in this book, because there's not a lot of books where I find somebody that's named Vicky. And there was so many twists. Like, I completely had me, like, it blew me away. Like, I never expected all the twists and turns in this book. So if you like thrillers and mystery and page turners, I highly suggest this one. You won't be disappointed. Then the first book that I read from T. Kingfisher was Nettle and Bone. It's a fantasy book, short book. I read it from November 9th to November 11th. It's a fairy tale type of retelling, but with a darker element. And I love the fact that basically it's the story about a sister that's trying to save her sister that got married, and the found family that she gathers on this quest to go and save her sister. And it was just beautiful. I love the fact that the main character was not a young girl. She must have been in her between 30s and 40s. I love that. It was just an amazing time. So highly suggest. Then the next one, and I got that one from my library. Then I got this one also from my library. It's fantasy but with romance. It's Half a Soul from Olivia Atwater. So it's about this girl that gets half of her soul stolen by a fairy, and the trying to get that soul back, and it was just beautiful. It's the first time I've ever read a book that talks about somebody with half a soul, first of all, and it was just beautiful. And it was also from a Montreal author, so that in itself is also a fabulous thing. So really love that story. Then the last two that I have are actually memoirs. The first one is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I got it as a Libby audiobook. It was narrated by the author. Very hard book to listen to. Gut-wrenching story about how she was sexually abused, and the whole trial, and hearing her side of the story, and how everything took shape, and how judged she was, and very hard story to hear. I had to take quite a lot of pauses in it. My heart broke for this poor girl going through this, and for everybody. I mean, this was a girl, but there's men that go through this as well, and it's just so hard to read about how they go through so much pain. And I understand that you're not guilty, you're innocent until proven guilty, but at the same time that the victims would have to go through so much hardship to have justice done for them is just gut-wrenching to me. So really, really beautiful book. I was really happy to have found it on Libby because of the fact that it was narrated by her as well. And I think I prefer memoirs to be on audiobook than actually physical book, and that's probably why I read so many memoirs this year, because of the fact that a lot of them were on audio, and I find it more interesting that way. Then another one, the last one that is in my top 11 is The Woman in Me from Britney Spears. It was also a Libby audiobook, and I read it from December 14th to December 17th. It blew me away what she went through, and that it could actually take place in this time and age, that she could be that as a grown woman she could have been robbed of her rights to choose, I mean, stuff as small as what food she wanted to eat. It's just, yeah, it was really, really I've always liked Britney Spears, so I was very curious to pick it up, and I had heard so many good things about this book. It was, yeah, as a mom, to read what she went through for her babies, very, very gut-wrenching as well, but beautiful, and yeah, so highly suggest that. So those are my top 11 books of the year. I'm looking forward to knowing what you think. What are your favorite books of the year? Any that I read, that you read, and what did you think about them? I would love to know. And if you have recommendations, I would love that as well. And of course, if you're on Goodreads, come and join me. I would love to have you as part of my friends. And that's it, guys. I love you so much. Take care, and I will see you all very soon. As I said, I want to prepare a video with the stuff that the journals I've used and things. This book, obviously, I'm going to show again in that video, but I won't show in detail as I did this time. But just I'll tell you what worked for journals and what didn't, and what I'm thinking of doing this upcoming year. So that's it, guys. Love you so much. Take care. Bye.